Savanna stories. It's a tire, I cantare, marire, mare. Savanna story, hila, hila. Savanna story. It's like the old camel from tree against the blue, blue sky. The only reason why we all gotta try. Savanna story. Savanna stories.
Swahili ngono ndete irina ako wete kuti Swahili ngono ambara o haiganjire no hokucha mbura irokena Swahili ngono kandi wete kuti o irina ika ndete kucho irina lelale ya opu iswauchi na kucho iri pali ya hiri pali opuna mea haifiti chinene na ndombura iroke ambara poma mono ambali hapumene na umwizi upunishwa imwe oyathita ngamara umwizi mono hagumeni kirerana ya
Tuvare twakapanda tuvare twakapanda ai tuvare twakapanda tuvare twakapanda ai tuvare twakapanda so tuvare twakapanda chandoru rukuru herero kandinondi tuvare twakapanda ahengunda veri ponganda waraire kashiungu katuyende tukaponde shingeyo varumendo vakwetu tuvare twakapanda
There was a TV or a movie that came out about nearly 30 years ago, which was Star Wars, and Chewbacca was the Wookiee, and he's the one who flew the spaceship. So when Chewbacca was born, I had a student here from France who's a Star Wars, he just loves Star Wars. And so Chewbacca is C-H-E, which is sort of like the start of cheetah. And I have sort of a bigger feeling is that if we look at Star Wars, which was all the rage with people that 30 years ago, and even still today with the new ones that are coming in, that we're looking at the space and how to live in space. And yet I think Chewbacca, the cheetah, is a representative of what we have life on Earth today. If we want to look at the space as our future, I'd like us to look at him today and wonder if we can live in the future without him.
Barua molo njamba awe molo ngora mambo amishimbiwa movando mera katutola makowe ikona yakoka unono ndambo mushirire owe ikona yakoka ameshe kambewa nambandende mamukurateno mambongeri moshare shanje isikororo shikuniwa shiwelewele wakavere winoperi okulake
ya ver mater kurhim shende sharuka ambaraka ei ichichindichi imambyo kai ichika upoya kuimonina na hinge ni unjimoda dikamondama ngahinga dadi kireni na hinge dadi kiro dinji ni horupa dirimbali ya dikiro horupa dirimbali yotai matukireko ne na hinge ya matukireko opu ye ya matukireko na ushina kutia odadi kadinu no nani dinu ni munu choni yathikane yeombathirire kayethi muni Nokokure uimae muno kutiai na sita tufathuka bwega mbano no iga fathuka bo mbasa mune utati atutsakanene nangwe upo mune mokutsakanena nengono utayara ningeno ikwate po imone mukukwata po imo uchina kuti anhu enji po imo taiya koni mane yotaikwatwa ne mano taimatwa ne na inge muno ya tokuno chinini ne hundu adishi ambara nditi no manja ngambara kali ponje era weekend
ombanda ya kotoromeva koulutwa bako mamushale joshi seletona meungire shavi mehi rohahero ovikeno vinamo yetumbi tomba hapo meungira meshavi meire tulovando vawa oweiko na njimwadhuvire mongora mambo erero
ashaishuvisa njina irira shashokanga nanga isimbo njono hii yarumatire ngono kandavike ndiripo kandavika ndiriko chivarongo ndaire kuchivarongo ndakataripira zanyi kuchipangiro taiti nehindi yono ndavane yarumatwa nenga ashaichuvitire njini irira shayoka kandaindinekera kucha taikarumatwa ngoga na inge ngino poyaruke ngino ndeifarane kuya kwetumbea puno kapangiro kembwane kirimono opo taikakoshwa netanga taikonjwani taiti yakonjwa ngono tayeru yafa yeruka taitamike matangu kuzindo meata taiti meata kara takatungire nemo taiti takana namune natango meyangu opo sio tayerukanga pero yerukarira yakapina kaina ubuwazi nyimo kumatuka taimatuka shayo kushina kutia ochimache yehamithire mara ngeya muno nuri humathikama muno yaramba de tafikama aitaiikoega taigaruka hi na ingo inumba ndaliru nini kuchana tangu ni mambe taikehamithanje
I was working as a politician in the United States and wanted to see what was going on in Africa firsthand. So I came over for 9 months. After a couple months in South Africa, just through a fluke, I came up with a gentleman who was a hang glider and wanted to set a world record in Namibia for the longest flight. And I came up as his driver. And it was just as Namibia was transitioning into independence. So I had not planned on visiting Namibia because it was known that it was very hard to get lodging and all the rest of it. So I had permanent lodging. I got to drive all around the country, picking up this gentleman every day. I met my husband my second day in the country. And basically that was 15 years ago. So I met him, I fell in love with the country, I fell in love with the people, I fell in love with the environment, and I stayed. my husband and I are farmers. He's from a very old Namibian farming family. So we have a cattle ranch, and that's basically our income. We also do tourism. Now that's expanded to introducing people to vultures and conservation, but most of our tourists don't come here for vultures. They come here for our wilderness trails or to visit neighboring things in the Uchis and Jupa area. I've always loved animals, and I've always had pets and animals and cared for them. But no, I had no background in conservation, biology, any of the typical backgrounds that most conservationists have, I didn't have. And when we moved to this farm, I can still remember, I suppose the turning point in my mind was, my husband and I saw some vultures in a tree. One of them was a Cape Griffon. And my husband said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said to me, you know, look at that bird, because they're going extinct. That's one of the last ones you'll ever see in this country. Basically what the Namibian public can do to identify a Cape Griffon is look at the coloring of their eye. When they're adults, they'll have a very, very yellow eye, and this neck will have turned bluish. When they're juveniles, it's very difficult to distinguish them against their cousin, the white-backed vulture, but when they're adults, they're pretty easy. They're bigger than the white-backs, and they're usually a little whiter, but that color is not always an indication.
Shodonjupa, 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 Shodonjupa.
Ehui, oku kusa onyata poma. Uchimachi sira. Utaiti ndiche oyo epialiao. Uchimachi sira hike marochasa komkithi wa vurokulio. Utaito tavia tadiri ponya manjo na hamona daria ponya manjo no taito za kusa ponya tanjo taito masipango no netagathi mono taito soso evi masipango tagathi mu soso evi mbo. Onkaro kulisa nembwa kumba neharo lera kuchandi kongombo iri sirenji ya ogumwe otako okuneharo lyokulisa ikombo iri senombwa medina lokutia ikombo ayirika pona ndoki totongwe ukombo naulika nandoka njengere chavale ya mokuti ya umotati andika niso chinji kulama ndikongombwa ininga iri sirenji ya uchina kuchanga kwa kongombo uchina kuchanga ukanjeno akaranga afa iri kokura ya uchina kuchaka njengirita mono cha makuti uchina kototi korere kikikombo uponeta msita tazini honta mono kuti kuna fara mairi ya kutoko sisi efa kula mandika ndininga wansuka ndimonombo
Seletona Barua molo njamba awe molo ngora mambo amishimbilu ambo vando mera katotola makowe
ngere nditi na ndikufare ne punji ndani mangike iyo nyoni yipanjike kuchaye rongombwanjo upo ilipo sisi fandiro mbure kuchaye indaki kombo ndotaiki kombo nenge irakunga tayakunga
siwelewele wakabirwe erawo wino peri okudake pukiro apome ungira meshavi
njino nando njino koni maifimo ndishina kuchana tangu ndengandi hongo na tangu ayuka kombana shako na tangu chimbona ngo ine mwezi 2 3 inike mwezi 2 3 kungu wasire ngom tihamano ngo ziro muwe
kowe iko na njimwaluba jimwalubile mongora mambo erero ndiheriko erero ndihakotoka nambano yo ndihakotoka muno
Ombwanjino ndito irishopo kwa diano shaka kuchinga kwetina kutia hakongo umba yombinzo kuudharira yokulitha na ndoto ihongo kungwe mwene utaichua kucha ae na inga ndirongo kulitha wini manda ndaperwa ndilife mpi upomono ne chako ihongo ne okulitha ngono aika karare ya itura monga hikyo ihongo kulitha ya to ihongo manga iroka chona ya to irongo nukombo nambuchona to irongo nukombo nambuchona taikaranga ko chibundango amona ikaranga ko chibundango no ngukombo na upiti moto mono nga hairandura mo kachuchu sigo taika ningo nini ya ngirenge uchina kutyo ombwa manga to irongo kachona ihole kudhana ukano nukombo ngoto igandanga upongo to iganda yendi nga yengine amona yaningo nini upongo to irandurisa ni kombo mbineni marange skundio to iturako nangwe mweno to randurako ni utari kucha ayitha nonkaro urimi tokaranga to yisanga sigo tayigirire amona kucha no yigirire upongo eto esi tayigirire
wawungiro mambo homa wa hekarerera ae shogonjupa ae njupilove shogonjupa
We have a very active breeding program here, and we usually have 2 to 3 litters a year. And we selectively breed, so we keep males and females from different litters. And so we're very careful about the bloodlines. We place the puppies grow up out in the goat yard, so they're born in the goat yard, and go through an introduction process with the livestock, as well as the chickens. And so they're actually raised with goat, sheep, and usually chickens in our goat yard. We place them at about 8 weeks of age after they've been neutered, spayed and neutered, and place them out with their flocks, where they grow up with the flocks. I realized there were about 20 different breeds of livestock guarding dogs, and I researched the different breeds of dogs. And I chose the Anatolian because they have a short hair coat, and they're used to living in vast open spaces unattended. They're very, very independent, and they're very intelligent. They think for themselves. We actually donate the Anatolians to the communal farmers. For the commercial farmers, we actually ask them only to help support our minimal costs of spaying, neutering, and the cost of the vaccination. Don't let them out. With the communal farmers, we also go around and work very closely with them in the training program, as well as in the vaccinating of the dogs on a yearly basis. As the bush is so thick, we've got the small calves oftentimes out in the thick bush. They will maybe lay down and their mother goes off to drink, or the goats and sheep are wandering through the thick bush, and they are easy pickings for an animal like a cheetah, a predator, or the jackals or caracal or leopard. So having a livestock guarding dog in there to protect them, they hear, they're very attentive, they hear anything that's going on with their flock, and they're right there kind of at attention. Even in the thick bush, they can hear through all this, get through on their own, and actually are there to protect the livestock. So having this bush encroachment problem, the livestock guarding dogs have actually played a role in protecting even in the thick bush.
Omutu batu barumendisa kwe makori omutu batumba barumendisa kwe makori omutu batumba barumendisa kwe makori okahanyango kiamberero baherero okahanyango kiamberero bambanderu
I feel that I'm doing something very important for the present and future generations. A cheetah is an endangered species on Earth, and therefore, if we don't take action to conserve it, it can be gone. And by doing that, actually, we are stealing from our future generations. Therefore, doing what I'm doing at the moment is very important towards the species and also for my future generations. Bush encroachment can be described as the overabundance of native bush. It has been caused through many generations of livestock management, the introduction of a different grazing system by livestock, which kind of is competing with the native grazing systems, the one that you can get in the wildlife, is putting a lot of pressure on the natural resources. There are a lot of methods that one can apply in order to get rid of, not really to get rid of, but to control bush, because I think that's very important. And by clearing our environment from bush encroachment, we can also increase our productivity, which can also benefit the country at large. The fuel logs are also called bush blocks. And why bush blocks? Is because they are made out of encroaching bush. We have a trained field team which moves around in this area, and they actually chop the bush by making use of hand tools. And then after that, it is fed into a chipper machine, and then it is chipped into small particles, because you can't really transport bush because it's too fluffy. So it's chipped, and then from then it's transported to the plant, which is in Chivarongo.
Waungiro mambo homa wa hekarerera ae shogonjupa ae njupilove ae njupilove ae njupilove shogonjupa
I think it is because, why is it important to conserve nature? It is because we conserve nature so that the generation that comes after us may be able to do the same, to see the different beautiful species of trees and the beautiful animals
which themselves can teach their children, like conserving the nature, and like it is very important to conserve nature, like for example to keep things away from becoming extinct. And so that as they grow up, as the younger generation, they can experience the nature, including all the animals or the species, and so on. Actually, what I would say is as follows. What I do when I talk in terms of the future, the job that I do, I would like to tell the nation the job that I'm doing is it will be a benefit for the country itself, and it will even teach the generation of Namibia about trees, about the protection of the cheetahs, and all these kind of things. And what I can say is as follows. And it even brings employment to those who are disadvantaged. And I'd like just to advise the nation, especially for those who are disadvantaged, this is it. And this project is the right kind of project that will lift up people from their standards, and in introducing employment to them.
Bush encroachment's actually been considered a very large factor. It was Dr. Chris Brown that actually came up with the theory of bush encroachment, inhibiting vulture, particularly feeding, finding the food, but also taking off and landing. Thus, it can be speculated that vultures are not carriers. So if any of you want to take up that research, if I was 20 years younger, that's one of my pet things. That's very interesting.
Because this area is so thick, bush encroach, do you experience any problem of landing of the vultures or sighting from top the dead carcasses, or how does that affect?
Absolutely. It's probably one of the third biggest problems for vultures, particularly in this area. In the last 50 years, bush encroachment has come in. And basically what it's done is closed down their landing strips and their takeoff strips. You see these birds weigh anywhere between 9 and 11 kgs. For those of you that think in pounds, it's about 22 to 25 pounds. They need large spaces to take off. You'll see today when we go up and watch the wild birds. If they cannot take off, they'll regurgitate their food. If they regurgitate their food, they won't survive.
Ombwanjo hindakara nayo na hingi onkaro wachenjana yauka hiwa chenjana ngahi ngino hiringino hairithike kuyemuni hako karonnoka ya na hiwa chenjana iko imona yo no haetika ishi kapuna na rishalikira makuti. Mbonde inine medinali ikombo hairika ko kitotongwe yengira chagalira makuti okakombo nakalika na ndoko kanje utaiti ne yohirire po ne kutana ndo chikombo chagara haichitakamisa ningi ngwadha iringo ndo ndamono kucho chikombo kachipo ndandi ikusa ayiri yifare njina ndo moko bale chikombo.
Barua modo njamba, awe modo ngora mambo, amishimbiwa modo, mera katutola, makowe ikona yakoka, uno no ndambo, mushidire, owe ikona yakoka, amishe kambegola, nambandende mamu kuratelo, mambongeri moshari shangi.
Hai mama kutinga hii kombinga yengwe amuziri nitoto ngomwiri nimambe no injiri ya mufara manje ngai kombinga yengwe na hii esikulimwe ndandirisa mangike ngandiri ni kombu ikenga hingino yona no irike meno poma pafitike na mangike ndirike ko nima ikombo yonda kuviko chikombo achiri ya chakwa tona ipo singo ira wenene ombo yali popepi utaima tukire po chikombo ho yakwata ho yaifa tuka yembo adiramba ayikaturika kombanda mti ya magutomo iri mashomoni ya magutomo iri mizinikiro kuti ngahi handikara nao o ondiringa kombinga imwe koni mondiri komesho ndiri ya ai wamununga na ndeo kali komesho wengo totinga kula mhanga ya okukalo moiri mara uchina kuti chikolera kuti yako ngeuli nombwa omwafanga muri yali ya yoiringa komesho ngolinga konima ya efimbo ndiyango wainga komesho sikuma aitinanga konima hako nkaro kombwa no mwafike muri yali nando adha nditayigarura katinanga chironga mwafike muri yali.
We thought unfortunate, but now we realize lucky enough to have one of our farms burn twice, 2 years in a row. Very, very hot. It's open savanna now. Fire has to come through every 5 to 10 years. And they have to be willing to sacrifice a certain amount of their farm to fire every 5 to 10 years. Not the entire farm, but a part of it. And I actually think that's going to be the best solution. Charcoal burning? Yes, I think if it's going to continue, I've seen a lot of reports in the media recently that it was never an option for us because of our wildlife, but that labor standards probably need to be changed, and those people need to feel more of a part of the farm and more of the process. And maybe it means the farmer has to expend a little bit more money, but I think in the long term it's going to be worth it. Then there's projects like CCF is starting. You know, that will be a very interesting project, particularly since it's going to produce a product that not only can be sold overseas, but I'm hoping can be sold in Novombo land, where you have the opposite problem of deforestation.
We had a lot of students that came through. We were doing a lot of studies. We wanted to look at the biodiversity of the land and, you know, how were the antelope species, the bird species, actually living in this thick and bushed area. The farmers also said if their livelihood was affected by bush encroachment, they couldn't go out and just shoot a bush, but if a cheetah killed one of their livestock, a goat or a sheep, that they could more easily remove a predator. And I thought, well, there's a tie-in here. As we continued with a lot of our research and with our hands-on many of the captured cheetahs, we started finding some physiological problems. Cheetahs that had blinded eyes, we started looking at, with veterinary ophthalmologists, some of their eyes had been scratched. And in looking at how they're living out here in this last of their homeland, this habitat, which is so thickly bushed, they're hunting at high speeds through the thick bush, scratching their eyes, and some are actually going blind. So we got involved in it from two sides and thought, well, if it's affecting the cheetah, we maybe needed to really look at opening up habitat. And started realizing that there were ways that we could utilize the bush that would economically benefit the country, at the same time benefiting the habitat for the cheetahs, for the farming community, and the economy of our whole country.
You can also make use of that product for building materials, or you can also make use of it as substitute of the wood that you can use for making tables or chairs. There's actually multiple uses. Usually when you chop the bush, it's around 25% moisture content. So the machine actually requires about 8% of the moisture. It goes at the plant and then it's laid out in the sun again to dry. And one of the reasons is why we are trying to dry the chips is if you put them into the processing plant, it can explode because of the moisture content. From there it goes into the compressing machine that forms the wood logs. I am a research assistant and education officer. My responsibilities actually involves working with schools at the center or traveling around in the country, working with teacher workshops, working also with youth groups from the regions. My research responsibilities includes the collection of data from the habitat, consisting of game counts, vegetation surveys, and all the other biodiversity species in this area. Because I have responsibilities as a research assistant and education officer, I have to make sure on a daily basis that my bases are covered.
akomeungira meshavi waeltotaya kandu naye iungira mesha ehire
umalipiro ogelinga shako ikombo china kutena ndopo mapuini oino kuyapa hiki mara kunani shako toko ngokutia ikombo ikale ilina kuruto imoni o marutu gafagelina siwonga ko kombura hita ikaroka Esharandina ntianda con kumba no o makingi no ko chimario ngine esharandio ngahite ihalime no mwidhingo yombulo hairo ko ngamali hapume no mwidhi onangita kongo nandeo ndite eterekera etara tomani etegara terike pivite ya kusapu kutetea kusapu tara terike pivinga ngitindi tara terike pivi taiti ombula njia hita ikia autaka mona chiri pa mama kuchekwerundo
Solonjupa Boperu kule nakaondeka kashomba Solonjupa Boperu kule inakakarara
Well, it's actually a difficult question because one message to the Namibian public, I probably have 100, as all of us do. But I suppose my one message would be, we have a beautiful country. We're Namibians, we need to pull together, we need to protect our country, and part of that is going to be protecting our wildlife. Without vultures, we are going to have problems with the spread of anthrax and botulism, a lot of diseases that are happening up in the northern Namibia and middle Namibia. We need vultures, but we probably need every species we have. You've got an airplane and you can take one pop rivet out and nobody's really going to notice. And you can take 10 out and maybe they still won't notice. But as soon as you take 100 pop rivets out of that airplane, it's no longer going to be flyable. So I suppose my message is, how many animals and plants in our environment are we going to take out before we suddenly realize that we've taken out too many? And I'm never going to ask that the vultures get a priority over the people of our nation. But there does have to be a balance, and we do have to protect our species. And my job is to help protect the vultures.
Bush encroachment is not really that natural to this environment. It's man-made. Therefore, it requires action by men in order to reverse the effects. My message to the Namibian nation is that we should take pride into our own natural resources. We should not wait until somebody else could come actually and tell us, guys, this is what you need to do. As the cheetah capital of the world, I would think that we have to promote good habitats that can sustain the cheetah populations, and also at the same time can also sustain human livelihoods.
Well, our natural environment is very important. It's going to provide us the income for our future generations as well as ourselves today. And so actually managing our natural resources is very important. And figuring out how to do this takes innovation, it takes a lot of work, putting science to it, and utilizing the skills that we have within our science base as well as our conservation approach. And then I think disseminating this through education. And utilizing those together I think is very important. But if our natural resources are gone, whether it's our grasses on the land or the cheetahs that are living within our habitats out here, then I think we're going to be pretty saddened, because these are the things, animals like the cheetah are going to be bringing more economy into our country. through ecotourism. And there's just a lot of ways that I think innovatively we can find ways that we can all live together.
Ape umbo ngeyazi mokuti uchingana kuti aenda zamokuti ila nduranga ilinga koni maikombo uchina kuti amono puno hofa yumbo aidingorka ni ikombo shaka ikombo etembuliri koni mayumbo tayanga motadi momia ni ikombo hadi momia ni ikombo ingere meme wanje ni tazi mome umbo araku yaku taiti hairalike pomwero upoyete ifefenganga yakote iganjo tataganjo ndite tati tangi kuyo yakaruri kombo ya nayo yuvitire nani yakuchingana kuti achima nayo kuchingana kuti achima chakaronge ya fara uka nokupiumbo ya ngirene ganjo ndangi nengono mpoyete ke iro takatara no chima uchiya chako kuchigunda nete iro ngekidiri kuli opoire ngekidiri kuli opoyeta shingiri kombo muchigunda yakite ipe manga ikombo ina ya muchigunda ikombo chakenga iningitha muchigunda opoyete ipe no chiya chikuli atairi marota thikamanga tafikama pulo atari kuchita iri ningita airi nenge itairi aho kauchingana kuti chima chikarangana ndono kai hamo kachona taye hamana ndekuli itaivoro kuli teimonene pone koni maethimbo ivuro ngai kamona mapangiro.